don't do a lot of Muslim videos, not because I have no answers, not because I'm afraid, but because I just don't stumble across that many of them. Christian videos on YouTube are a dime a dozen. Muslim videos, especially Muslim videos in English, are much less so. But I found that all of the criticisms that I level against Christian videos are just as applicable toward the Muslims because their shtick really isn't any different. So here we go with a Muslim video that claims that there's one question atheists can't answer, yet it's not at all hard to answer because it's not a question worth bothering with, except, of course, to the emotionally immature.
Let me help you answer the most important question in your life.
There are lots of important questions in my life. How you managed to distill this down to just one, I've got no idea. But please, gatekeeper, help me out here.
Come with me.
Where? Where are you going? I thought you were going to answer a question for me. I'm so confused.
Imagine waking up on an abandoned island one morning.
Okay, I can imagine that. I have a good imagination. When were you going to get to that question again?
You don't know where you are, how you got here, or why you're here. What would you do?
Well, the first thing I'd do is explore my immediate surroundings, find sources of food and fresh water, and build myself a shelter. Survival is job number one.
Like most of us, the most obvious thing would be to first find out answers to these questions.
No, that's dumb. The first thing anyone ought to do is survive. Those questions can wait until later once you're not starving or dehydrated or freezing to death.
You would search far and wide for clues and signs and anything that can perhaps guide you towards the right direction.
Anyone? Where am I?
No, I wouldn't. At least not until the essentials were established. Sure, sometime down the road, I'd think about how I got there, once I had a nice shelter, once I had a nice fish cooking over a fire, once I knew there were no immediate threats to my safety around me, maybe I'd have time to sit back and ponder the things that I had no answers to. But that's a distant 43rd consideration.
It sounds like the obvious thing to do, right?
No, it sounds like the stupid, irrational thing to do. Because it doesn't really matter how you got there, only that you're there and you have to make the best of it. Maybe this is why so many people don't survive in this situation, because they're stupid and emotional instead of pragmatic and rational.
The most common sense option?
No, the most common sense option is staying alive long enough to get rescued. The least common sense option is sitting there in the sand, starving to death, noodling your navel.
Well, you'd actually be surprised. You see, there's really little difference between waking up here and waking up here on planet Earth.
Are you out of your ever-loving mind? Because in one scenario, all of your survival needs are taken care of, or at least they're much easier to achieve than in the other. One, you have to find and prepare your own food. The other, food is readily available, assuming you can pay for it. And even if you can't, there are charitable options available to help you. One, you have to build your own shelter from the elements. The other, shelter is everywhere. You just have to go in out of the cold. Again, there are charities which will shelter you for the night if you're destitute. You just have to avail yourself of these options. Are you just nuts?
In both cases, we don't know how we got here, where exactly we are, and most importantly, why we're here.
I know all of those things through science, or at least I know if they are worthwhile questions to ask. The whole why question isn't, because it assumes a purpose without demonstrating that there is one. But of course, you have to remember that we're looking at an irrational video by the religious who don't really care if these are worthwhile questions, only if they're emotionally comforting questions.
So why the difference in response? I mean, why is it perfectly understandable to search for answers here, but completely inappropriate to search for answers here.
It's not. It's inappropriate to search for the kinds of answers that you want to search for in either place, at least until you have nothing better to do with your time. If you want to sit there and ponder questions, knock yourself out. Of course, you have to make sure that you accept the most realistic, evidentially supported answers and not just leap to the most absurd, emotionally comforting conclusions that you can come up with, which is exactly what the religious do. Because I'm sure this Muslim is going to follow the rational road, right?
Strange, isn't it?
Yes, it is strange that you'd rather feel good over wanting to have the actual truth, whether it's comforting or not. Why do you do that?
Well, let's take this a bit further. Let's say you continue walking along this abandoned island, and to your relief, you finally find someone that can actually help you.
Hey! What am I doing here?
That's a really dumb question to ask. How would this person have any idea what you were doing there? The only question that needs to be asked is, can you get me out of here? Or at the very least, do you have food, water, and shelter so I don't die?
Well, what if he's not interested?
How did I get here? I just woke up here.
So did I. What's the matter?
Okay, so you have someone else who similarly arrived and just doesn't know. How is screaming at them like a madman going to solve your immediate problem of survival?
How would that make you feel?
Don't care. How I feel is irrelevant if I'm dead from malnutrition or exposure.
Upset, bewildered, confused? I mean, what could possibly be more important than this?
Staying alive?
Well, what if I was to tell you that this happens almost every single day?
People wind up on deserted islands? Well, maybe on television, but you'd have to prove it if you want to be taken seriously.
Where we have 101 unanswered questions on life, and most of us are simply uninterested. We're busy, whether it's in work, family, wealth, fashion, entertainment, or catching up with the latest technology. It's not to say that these things are wrong, but surely they're not more important than answering the most important question in life.
What you think is the most important question in life. And obviously, most people disagree. Most people, even by your own admission, are more interested in survival and their quality of life over pondering existential questions that really don't seem to matter.
Our purpose.
Prove we have one. I mean, we can certainly give ourselves purpose if we want. We sort of have one from an evolutionary standpoint. But beyond that, prove that there's any kind of purpose that we inherently have that can be arrived at through intellectual and rational means. Oh, you can't? Huh.
You see, we can ignore all of this if we wanted to. I mean, no matter how important these questions are, at the end of the day, no one's forcing us to answer these questions.
Mostly because those questions have no objective meaning. It's like pondering the sound of one hand clapping. Who cares? It's a mind game that has no demonstrable impact on reality. You're the one asserting that these things matter. Okay then. Well, it's your job to back it up. Go ahead.
But there is one last thing. Our time here is limited.
Well, yes, since we all die. So what?
And the reality is, no one knows when, where, or how we're going to leave this world. But we will have to leave one day.
Nope. Life is a crapshoot. You can only do your best, and when your time comes, at least try to die with some dignity.
And whether we like it or not, when we do leave this world, we will have no choice left but to confront these questions.
Wrong. When we die, all evidence that we have says that we just die. We cease to exist. Our brains stop functioning, and whatever we were, created by the electrical and chemical reactions in the brain, cease to be. We simply vanish. Consciousness gone. Poof. Whether you like the idea or not is entirely irrelevant. That's what happens according to the evidence that we have.
And until then, would we still want to ignore this question?
Sure, because you still haven't proven that they're worthwhile questions to concern ourselves with.
Now, I don't plan on enlightening you with your purpose in this very short video,
You can do more than make bald assertions that we have a purpose without producing objectively verifiable evidence that it's so. Making an emotional appeal means nothing. You have to do far, far better. And I think we all know that you can't.
But I can at least ask you to start searching and start thinking about your purpose today. You'll get there.
Start thinking about reality today. It'll be a nice change from the typical religious emotional blathering that we see so often. I'd like to think that you'll get there, but I honestly don't know if you will. I don't know that the religious zealots are even capable of rejecting outright emotionalism and just dealing with things as they actually are.
إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات.
Too bad you can't actually show any of them, because the Quran, like the Bible and the Vedas and all the other silly religious books out there, claim to have special knowledge that they couldn't have without the intervention of some spook in the sky. But as far as proving it, yeah, that doesn't happen.
لآيات لأولي الألباب.
People of delusion is more like it. People who can't separate their emotional lives from their rational lives. And that's a problem. See, there really isn't that much of a difference between Christians and Muslims when it comes to the quality of their videos. It's the same old emotional garbage, fallacious assertions, and unfounded claims, no matter what silly book of mythology it comes from. They're still blathering on about unsupported nonsense that might make them feel good, but which makes no rational sense. And they wonder why we don't take them seriously. Well, they shouldn't. They don't say anything that is intellectually defensible. They just wave their arms around, making irrational claims and pretending to have answers to questions that don't really exist. They prey on people's emotions, but fail to engage people's intellect. Because I think we know that there's nothing intelligent in anything that they say. And that, as I'm sure we're all going to agree, is just sad.